Hey guys, welcome to Comics Pull List, the show where we discuss some of the biggest new comics to come out this month. This episode we'll be reviewing the finale to Rob Venditti's DC Rebirth run of Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps in issue 50, Captain America number 3, and the return of the Super Sons and the Adventures of Super Sons number 1. Remember to show some support to the creative teams behind the books and pick them up at your local comic book shops, Comixology, or through the links below on Amazon. Before you forget, click that like button, subscribe to the channel for more content, and be absolutely sure to hit that little bell button so that you know when our videos go up. If you really dig it, please show some love and share the video with your friends. Let's not waste any more time and get right into the books. We're going to kick this episode off with the finale of Robert Venditti's 5-year run on Green Lantern with Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps number 50. The art duties on this book are carried out by the great Rafa Sandoval. So, Venditti's been writing Green Lantern since Geoff Johns finished his historic run on the DC Cosmic in the New 52 Green Lantern number 20. That being said, this issue's pretty loaded with continuity, so if you haven't read any of his work, you're likely to be a bit lost. At bare minimum, I'd suggest that you start reading Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps Rebirth issue 1, but even then, I don't think you'll get the full effect. If you can, go back to the New 52 Green Lantern number 21 and read from there. If you feel like taking on a spectacular mountain of reading, start from Geoff Johns' Green Lantern Rebirth and continue on from there. Reading material aside, let's hop in. Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps is penned by Robert Venditti and penciled by Rafa Sandoval, both of which are such overlooked creators. We spoke about them at great length in a discussion here with Comic Boom and Joseph's Books, so go check that out when you're done. Issue 50 picks up directly where the previous one left off, as Hal Jordan is amidst a fight with Tomar 2 in the Dark Star headquarters. I'm not going to give a lot of context to this because I urge you guys to go support these stories. But I will say, if some of you older Green Lantern fans are wondering why Tomar is fighting against the Green Lanterns, he's currently the leader of the Dark Stars, whose drive is to execute justice to the most extreme levels by any means necessary. Tomar 2's turn to the dark side adds a lot to his character in my opinion, so definitely go check that out. As the battle between two former friends continue, Hal tries to remind Tomar why he'd become a Green Lantern in the first place. As Tomar 2 gains the upper hand, he points out Hal's biggest flaw, his will. He implies that Hal knows that in order to stop the Dark Stars, he must kill his old friend, and if he doesn't, Hal may end up losing his own life instead. From Tomar's perspective, the Green Lantern Corps' refusal to kill criminals and give them new chances may ultimately be the cause of needless death throughout the universe. Back with the Green Lantern Corps in space, John Stewart leads the charge against the Dark Star Army, along with a surprise help by way of General Zod and Arkilo. The sheer size of the Dark Star Army is beginning to overwhelm the Corps, and Guy, Zod, and Arkilo suggest that John lift the no-kill order. With that being said, John decides to maintain that they not kill, as to show the universe that justice can be served without murder. In the midst of combat within the Dark Star base, Hal begins to egg on Tomar 2, likening Tomar's newfound aggression to a scared child without a father. Tomar throws blow after blow, asking Hal how he deals with the death of his father. Isn't he angry? He asks. Hal responds that his father's death is what makes him who he is, not because he lost his father, but because he holds on to the parts of him that were most dear. In a spark of pure willpower, Hal fires back at Tomar 2, knocking him down. Hal explains that he fought the fear by doing the very thing that caused the death of his father, and climbed into the cockpit, while Tomar dug himself into a hole. Hal injects his willpower into the Dark Star's telepathic link, with the intent of willing them to do good, and lifts the mantle's control. After a flash of green light seen around the sector, we find Tomar 2 on his knees, realizing what he's done. Hal does what any great friend would do after his boy tries to kill him, and tells Tomar 2 that he can pay his debt by serving time and learning to be better. Suddenly, with a large crash, comes an enraged General Zod, filled with murderous contempt for Tomar 2. In a previous issue of the series, we learn that Tomar 2's father, Tomar Ray, was actually the Green Lantern assigned to Krypton at the time of its explosion. But before Zod can exact his revenge, Hal prepares himself to battle for the life of his friend, as a remorseful Tomar 2 holds the Dark Star blaster to his chest and pays the ultimate price. With his last dying breath, Tomar 2 tells Hal not to mourn for a killer, and to tell the universe that he was good in the end. Sometime later, the Green Lantern Corps looks to both place a bookend to the era and start something new. A flurry of Green Lantern rings erupt from the power battery as a new generation of lanterns are recruited across the DC universe. As the last issue comes to a close, we join the four Corpsmen of Earth as they look into the future of the Corps for brighter days ahead. Venditti's run on Green Lantern was absolutely spectacular and will inevitably be up there with the likes of Geoff Johns and the biggest creators to touch the part of the universe. Venditti's strengths lie not only in the crafting of superb stories that span the narrative of his run, but the character interactions between the four corpsmen and pretty much everyone he decides to include. I think that with a character library as large as this, it's really easy to let character voices get lost in the mix, but that's never been the case throughout this run. The way Venditti voices Hal, in particular, really captures me, and has been a big contributor in making Hal the greatest Green Lantern of all time. A majority of the run, with this issue being no exception, is accompanied by the great Rafa Sandoval art. From early on in this Rebirth run, Sandoval has proven to be such a hidden gem artist. His fluidity in the way the characters move and interact is unprecedented and unmatched by a great majority of artists. Not to mention the way he draws the space scenes and battles is absolutely jaw-dropping. To summarize it all, issue 50 by Venditti is an appropriate ending to his nearly 80-issue run. Huge Hollywood battles in space, great characterization, powerful thematics, and a surprise ending to top it all off. This book was continuously at the top of my stack to read every time it came out, and if you haven't read it, go do it. There'll be some links in the description to hit up Amazon for discounted trades, but if you're like me and you love your local comic book store, go pick it up from them. Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps sits at a well-deserved 9.2 out of 10. Seriously, go check Rob's work out. If you haven't started already, make sure to check out his current Hawkman run. He's only 4 issues in at the time of this recording and will be super easy to catch up on. Adventures of Super Sons #1 reunites master writer Peter Tomasi back with the Children of the World's Finest with artist Carlo Barberi. The Super Sons series was a shining star for DC in recent years, and I'm more than excited that Tomasi gets to bring these guys back to the spotlight. Before I start doing my usual rambling, let's get on into the first issue. Issue #1 picks up with Robin, Damian Wayne narrowly avoiding death by a Superman statue, as Superboy Jonathan Kent watches idly. After getting barked at a bit by Damian, John decides to jump into the fight and pop his old man's statue right in the jaw. While John plays distraction, Damian traces everything back to the puppeteer. After having some fun and John getting smacked around by the Superman statue, the boys save the day as a mysterious watcher approaches Earth. Honestly, the banter between the two boys is probably the best part about the book. They argue like brothers, cracking jokes at each other, which is really elevated by their expressions via Barberi's artwork. We pick up sometime later in the final moments of the boys' first year at the West Reeve School in Metropolis. I know a lot of locations in comics are named after some of the men and women that have added to these characters over the years, but the West Reeve School is absolutely perfect. As Jonathan jumps for joy that school's out, Damian discusses his dissertation on Tegmar's interpretation of Schrödinger as an extra credit assignment. A little bit of an overachiever, but you can't do anything less than that when you're the son of the Batman, I guess. We soon learn that the Man of Steel and the Misses are out of town, leaving John and Damian to begin their Summer of Super. The boys return to their aptly named Fortress of Attitude when a distress signal from Metropolis alerts them of a creature attack. The boys arrive on the scene just in time for John to catch a hurled car with the drivers still inside. John discovers that the beast has a mind of its own, when suddenly Damian takes a shot from an unknown assailant. As the issue comes to a close, the mastermind behind everything is revealed to be a mini Lex Luthor and the gang. Little Lex pulls out a chunk of gold kryptonite, rendering John useless, as Damian can do little more than just watch, as Lex beats down on John, ending the issue. Guys, this issue was a lot of fun to read. Tomasi back on Super Sons is something that myself and a number of other fans have been waiting for a while. I love the big approach to the narrative, but for me it's the interplay between John and Damian that makes this book truly special. See, the crazy thing is, Tomasi didn't create either of these characters, but I'm unapologetic when saying that he's the one who developed them into the characters we know and love today. From his Batman and Robin run, to Superman during the Rebirth era, and the original Super Sons, Tomasi fundamentally understands these characters, and I'm excited to check out the next issue. Carlo Barberi's artwork is also a tonal match for what Tomasi is pulling out with the script. The facial expressions penciled by Barberi make the characters feel so real and authentic alongside the great action choreography. I'm going to give this issue an 8.5 out of 10. Really solid, fun book, and I hope to see the stakes raised as the story continues. Last book on the docket today is Captain America #3 by the incredible Ta-Nehisi Coates and Leinil Francis Yu. This issue we pick up with Sharon Carter somewhere in Caith, Alberia, inside a government transport vehicle. As her supposed bodyguard puts his hand on her shoulder, Sharon realizes that something's up and goes on the offensive. Here we cut to an unnamed small town in America where a hooded Steve Rogers talks over beers with an average Joe. And by that I mean, the guy's name is Joe. Joe, along with many others we learn, have been explaining that before Secret Empire, small America was forgotten about by the US government and largely considered flyover country. Businesses were going down, unemployment through the roof, and schools were closing at an alarming rate. Hydra was actually the only force to drive growth in the community by fixing schools, taking out drug trafficking, providing healthcare, and revitalizing the job market. The entire discussion plays out as an interesting analysis of the relationship between survival and compromising values. In this case, Joe didn't necessarily agree with the way Hydra went about things, but they kept the people safe. We learned through Joe that soon after the downfall of Hydra, a mysterious company, Power Enterprises, assumed the philanthropic role in town. The commonality that I'm finding throughout Coates' Captain America run is how Steve's internal monologue is potentially the most important part of the book. Here, Steve criticizes the lack of unity in the US, and how unfortunate it is that it takes extreme tragedy to feel as one nation. At the tail end of their conversation, Joe refers to the country in modern day as if it were less America than what had come before. The two types of America discussed here, as noted by Cap, are simply America in two different times, both equally important as the other. As a high-tech aircraft flies above Steve, he's phased into it by none other than the King of Wakanda himself, T'Challa, the Black Panther, along with his General Okoye. T'Challa reveals that the New Powers Enterprise is led by a cabal of Selene, Kingpin, and Baron von Strucker, while Wakanda has secretly been backing Cap since his separation from the US government. We also learn that Zeke Stane, in connection with the Powers Enterprise, is behind the mass reproduction of nuke clones. As the three infiltrate the Powers storage facility, they find hundreds of nuke clones ready to take blood. One of the most important, if not the most important, to Coates' Captain America run thus far is the internal monologue. As Steve, T'Challa, and Okoye prepare for combat, Steve explains that he feels remorse for his recent conflict with the nuke clones. He feels responsible that his overwhelming desire to prove his manhood and be the hero was ultimately contorted into turning good soldiers like Frank Simpson into the enemy. They jump fist first into an army of nukes as we get this amazing splash delivered by artist Lionel Francis Yu. As the clash rages on, Steve begins to lose focus, as the thought of fighting those who were once American soldiers make him pull some punches. His Wakandan partners, however, do not express the same sentiments and impale another nuke clone right before Steve's eyes. As the issue comes to its climax, T'Challa confronts Zeke Stane in battle, Steve faces the nuke army, and Okoye inserts a Wakandan virus into the mainframe, causing the nuke clones to drop like flies. While T'Challa is able to get the upper hand on Stane, Captain America's inner monologue informs us that Stane must have had help in Washington. Otherwise, this whole ordeal would have been nearly impossible. After observing some of the powers data, Okoye stumbles into the room yelling that they must locate Agent 13, Sharon Carter. As the issue reaches its end, we pick up with Sharon holding a gun to one of her assailants' heads as one of the big players in the Powers Enterprise, Selene, leeches the life force of the captive and implies that she has a greater role than death prepared for Agent 13. This issue of Captain America does not disappoint. From the dialogue to the way Steve thinks, Ta-Nehisi Coates shows us that he fundamentally understands Steve Rogers. Coates' Captain America with ties cut from his country is still Captain America. This character no longer represents the nation, but the values that the nation at one point held dear. He will stand at odds with anyone who acts in opposition, even if it's the country he once served. This issue in particular is a nice way for Coates to incorporate his other Marvel title, Black Panther, into the fold. Also, the framing device of a literal small-town American Joe is both everyday perspective and commentary on the events today was a great way to drive the narrative for the issue. It prompts a lot of discussion on loyalty and how the inherent need for survival or well-being can skew who you're loyal to. Aside from the messages delivered throughout this book, we also got some awesome comic book kickassery by Lionel Francis Yu on the art. The battle between our heroes and the army of nukes was a lot of fun to look at and drawn incredibly. Yu also finds the time to direct the more modest scenes by pushing the gestures and the facial expressions. His artwork really melds well with Coates' fantastic script. Issue 3 doesn't really have as much to say about the state of things, both in the story and reality, as the previous two did, but nonetheless had some really powerful commentary on loyalty, survival, and the treatment of soldiers in combat, amongst many other things. This book in particular takes more time to move the story forward, and I'm fine with that. As much as I love the deep character studies in issues 1 and 2, this one was a nice reprieve and increases the pace of the narrative well. I'm gonna have to give this issue an 8.8 out of 10. I know it sounds a bit nitpicky, but I think the B+ to A- range is where this book sits for me right now. Really excellent all around, but it didn't have the oomph to elevate it to an A. But that's okay, I feel like we really needed an issue like this to help make the overall narrative better for the story. make sure to pick this book up at your local comic book shop or from the link below in the description. We're only on issue 3, so it shouldn't be too hard to catch up. Alright guys, that's it for today's episode of Comics Pull List. I hope you all enjoyed it, and thank you for watching. Let me know what you thought of the books we discussed in this episode in the comments down below. Also, which one of the 3 seems most interesting to you? If you want to read them for yourself, the links to grab them on Amazon will be in the description. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, comment, and share the video to help us grow. To stay updated on all of our content, you can click that little bell button and follow us on Twitter. If you have any questions for new topics, let us know. Otherwise, let's just chat comics and all things geek. Catch you guys in the next video from Dark Knight Nation.